A warm welcome back. You are still watching Morning Live. Now, sports fans are once again in for another exciting sporting weekend full of action, from local and international football games to rugby matches. And as we normally do on a Friday, we've roped in the award-winning sports journalist and analyst Khanyiso Tshwaku, who joins us virtually. Khanyiso, a very, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Sports on Morning Live.
Well, to the viewers.
So let's start our conversation and just chat to the Currie Cup final and what your expectations are going into this big one.
Look, I mean, the Lions will look at this final as one that they have to win, one that they need to win. Based on the fact that through the last stage of the tournament, they started to bend towards the URC players. They picked a quasi-URC squad for their semi-final against Poland, which they won quite easily. So, I mean, they're overwhelming favorites. But if you look at the Griquas have actually played some very good rugby. They've used the momentum from the SA Cup leading into the Currie Cup very well. So, look, on paper, the Lions look like a side that they should win the tournament. But also, on the other hand, the Griquas are a well-drilled side of the Peterburg.
Indeed. So, where would you say you likely believe it will be going?
Look, the Lions will be hurting from last year's loss. They lost the final they should have won. They'll probably have better conditions as compared to last. If you remember, last year's final was played under severely cold and wet conditions that affected the flow of the game. I mean, the drier it is, the more it gets the Lions. The Lions, from an experience perspective, from a paper perspective, are much better than the Griquas. But it's a Lions URC team playing against a Griquas Currie Cup team. But Griquas also do have cohesion with them, having played pretty much as a group since the SA Cup, and they've looked apart for the better part of the tournament. So it's going to be interesting to see how they just keep themselves together for 80 minutes from 3 p.m. onwards.
All right, that will be very interesting. Perhaps give me your thoughts then on just some players that won't be available, particularly from a Lions point of view, and how you see that affecting that outcome of this final.
I think it's not a fact of who's available, but who is playing. I mean, remember that Asinathi Kabaganye is playing in the final, and remember that he was the one that missed out the bulk tour because of the of the substance that's landed him with hot water with the South African Institute of Drug-Free Sport. So I think how he gets through the game tomorrow is going to be very interesting. Remember that he's not provisionally suspended by SABC, so I think his appearance, especially from a confidence perspective, is very important because he was available to play. But Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus did say that for his own mental health and well-being, they chose to actually let him sit out the test matches. But he has been picked by the Lions, so it's going to be interesting to see how he gets through the final tomorrow.
All right, let's move on into continental football news. I want to start by looking at Orlando Pirates up against Leoli. It is the Leoli home game out in Bloemfontein tomorrow afternoon. What are your thoughts on that, just looking at this first preliminary stage of the CAF Champions League?
Look, it should be an easy enough game for Pirates. They're playing in Bloem, which is effectively a home game for Orlando Pirates based on the fact that it's actually played in Bloem. Pirates did not play on the weekend or during the week as compared to Chiefs, so actually away in Angola. So Pirates, since the final, have been well rested enough. So they should be able to get back, not points per se, but should be able to score the necessary goals in the first leg that will allow their second leg to be even easier when they head back to Joburg.
And you touched already on a case the Chiefs as well being in Confederation Cup action this weekend. We look at the encounter. We'll be live on SABC2 tomorrow evening. Amakosi, just a lot happening around the team at the moment, with a lot of speculation about what will and what will not happen with the technical team. Talk to me about how you see them approaching this away leg of the Confederation Cup.
It's a big game for Chiefs. It's a big game for Chiefs. I mean, it's the first CAF game since the final that they lost against Al Ahly. And if you look at the travails that they've been through, what it meant for them to get to this particular stage, this game is everything for them. They cannot afford to lose this away game. They've been hinging their hopes on getting into the CAF tournament. They couldn't get through by virtue of finishing in the top 4, but by virtue of finishing in the top 8. So this game probably is the most important game of the season, where they need to make sure that they actually score goals away and actually make sure that they've got something to work with when they get up. They cannot afford they can afford a 1 or 2 a 1-0 defeat. But they cannot afford anything more than that because, one, they've left a significant number of players behind. I suspect that they haven't been not probably registered, but they're looking ahead to the home leg, which will probably take place next week. But I think the key part for them is just to make sure that they contain Kabus Kope and Angola and ensure that they've got enough leg room to work with when they play the return.
And Khanyiso, I suppose it would also be important for them not to allow the off-the-field issues to affect how the players step out onto the field of play come tomorrow evening.
That's the most important part. It's interesting that I don't think the club's actually announced that they are in negotiations for an exit package with Nasreddin Nabi, but a coaching movement game can and will cause instability. But also on the other hand, it can also help with the team just banding together because they actually now have a point, something to play for, something to actually stand behind. They know that one, they are coachless. If they are coachless, therefore they need to make sure that they have something to play for. So instability can work one way is in that it can destabilize the side and also can bring them together. For Chiefs, I hope that they can actually pull the squad together, especially with such an important game that they need to play.
And finally, Khanyiso, as I wrap up with you, I want to quickly touch on Bafana Bafana. We saw the news coming out yesterday that FIFA officially opening an investigation into the Tebogo Mokoena saga. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's so late because a couple of, I would say probably a week before that, we had seen all the sanctions that FIFA was imposing in terms of various rounds of qualifiers, and there was nothing against South Africa. So to now hear that there is actually official confirmation being sent to SAFA to say we are investigating this matter, you now have a right to make your representations.
The sooner the matter is concluded, the better, because at the end of the day, South Africa still have a lot of leeway to work. In that, even if they have 3 points and 3 goals deducted, they won the last 2 games against Zimbabwe and Rwanda. They'll qualify for the World Cup nonetheless. So at least what Bafana have done is that whatever's been happening in the boardroom or the lack of the inactivity in the boardroom, they haven't allowed it to seep on the field. And more importantly, they haven't dropped major points. Yes, they dropped 2 points against Nigeria, but at the end of the day, it's not a big deal for them in that if they win the next 2 games, regardless of what the other teams do, they qualify for the World Cup. And also remember that Nigeria and Benin made in the last round. So South Africa could beat Zimbabwe in Botswana next month. And whatever then happens between the other 2 teams, they eliminate each other. But whatever happens is that South Africa have their fate in their own hands. So if the points are lost, it can be a slight concern. But the matter of fact is South Africa still have their fate in their own hands. They don't have to worry about other results going their way to qualify for the World Cup in the US.
All right, so yeah, we are hoping we're not going to have to get to a situation of bringing out the calculators when the team has done so well up until this point. Of course, Coach Hugo Bruce and his troops play the last round of FIFA World Cup qualifiers in October for South Africa. We face Zimbabwe as well as Rwanda. But we are hoping that that encounter between Benin and Nigeria will do us some favors. That's where we'll wrap up your sport news for today right here on Morning Live. We do it all over again tomorrow.